absolute honor to be here, and I want to make sure that you recognize the efforts of this company. Most of these Megan has a lot of stress because she probably has an amount of product to move to keep her job, but yet her focus, the last 3 or 4 days we've talked, she hasn't talked any about her product. She talked about you. And so the relationships that you have with pharmaceutical or veterinary clinics I hope is as important to you as it is to Megan and I. And I want to thank Merck for helping. 10 years ago, Merck invested a pretty big pile of money and let us go to K-State with some people from Australia and Brazil, and we created a program, a stockmanship program called Creating Connections. And we need to bring that program back up so that these people had access to it. But they did that so that they understood finally that a vaccine in a bottle is worthless and a vaccine in a terrified animal is worthless. And so it enhanced the response of their products. It made sense. Antibiotics no different, Mandy. You treat a starving, malnourished calf with an infection. The antibiotic doesn't heal him. He heals himself. Antibiotics kill bugs. And so they're really a company that's very unique, Megan, and trying to build our level of understanding. And the vaccines the products are Safeguard. It has to be the most amazing compound there is. The deworming program, the strategic deworming, the things that you can do with that product and know that there's no internal parasite resistance to it. You give it to that animal and give it correctly, and it's amazing. So we'll talk a little bit about implants today. So think about that. The other people to recognize is this group of people: Dr. Katie, Dr. Mandy, Dr. Emily, all the people from Crazy Mountain. I've got an idea. I've got a feeling that if you have some trouble in the middle of the night, these people will answer the phone. And that, I'm sorry to say, but where I live now, my old practice, when it's 4:30 in the afternoon, that phone essentially shuts off till morning. One of my former partners just retired, and he told me one of his greatest accomplishments is that he convinced his team to be closed all day Saturday, even during calving season. And so to have people like this in this room, you can't describe it. Veterinarians are here to serve, and veterinarians are here to understand. Veterinarians are here to let you know that we have more questions than answers, and the answers are in this room. So think about that. Megan's introduction was perfect, but the only little glitch was she said we look at 250,000 feedlot cattle a day, and that's what Wade and my goal was, to be able to get to that in 5 years. And there's another 0 or 2 on that. We look at 2.5 million feedlot cattle a day, a month. And with the downloads and the technology of fiber optics, I think now 1 out of every 10 ribeyes that is consumed in America is at one of our veterinarians' feedlots. And the reason I'm here is that I've gone away from cow-calf medicine, and what I've understood is that what you do is more important than what I do. It is amazing. The fetal programming that you're doing changes everything. What you give your mama before she's bred or before she calves, that vaccination program, what you do at branding, what you do at pre-weaning, what you do at weaning has changed the feedlot world. When I started feedlot medicine, the most important disease in America was IBR. You've eliminated it. think about it. A cow that's vaccinated at preg check time, that fetus is in there. You've already vaccinated the fetus before he was born. You give him a booster at branding. You give him a booster at pre-weaning. And then at the backgrounding yard, usually somebody else vaccinates them with what could be a 5-way viral, could be an intranasal, could be a combination. But the point is, to find a positive IBR in a feedlot today, it's easier to find an Arrowhead. They don't exist there. I want to thank you for that. And I want you to recognize that I want you to capture the benefits of what you do, essentially. So what else do I need? The most important part of the day is that woman sitting back there in that wool jacket. If it wasn't for her, I would have never got to go learn these things. If it wasn't for her, I'd have never got to go to Australia the first time, Dr. Mandy. She stood there. She can irrigate, she can build fence, she can check water, she can move cows, and do it better than I can. So that's my first wife, and it's been a really beautiful thing. So thank you, Diane. So veterinarians are here to empower caregivers. When I first started giving these talks, the title was caretaker. And I still hear that in the medical field. Like, you go into this hospital and there's a bunch of caretakers there. Are they giving or taking? Anyway, I think caregiver's a better word. And I'll show you some examples of people that are there and they can move cattle from point A to point B, and they give cattle confidence. They give cattle health. They give cattle performance. They give them understanding. I'll show you a couple examples of cattle being moved from point A to B, and the cattle move, but they're not the same. It's a negative process. So we want to empower caregivers to be dedicated to make every human animal intervention a positive experience. And what Bud Williams taught me is when you develop your observation skills, all of a sudden you start seeing things that have always been there, but you've never seen them. When Bud started going feedlots with me, I walked through cattle and did this. I made sure I saw every one of them. And he said, don't do that, you'll kill them. They hate that. Look over the top of the herd and look at nothing but see everything. And then you will see tiny changes. And when you see a tiny change or a tiny abnormality, then study it. But don't try to create disease. Don't try to create anxiety. Look over the top and observe. So most of what that have helped me is building my powers of observation. And you guys are good at that. So it's really important. This is where we started. This is what we used to see in the processing barns. This barn cost a lot of money. And they use more hot shot batteries than vaccine. Every one of these animals got 10 cc's. I'll show you later a video of the cattle exiting out of the chute. 50% of them would jump out and fall on their side. And they asked me, what brand of vaccine should we be using? And I said, it doesn't make any difference. You shouldn't even bring them to this barn. This is what we expect to see today. This team does 12 to 1,800 a day, and they're home at 3 o'clock. It looks slow. They work from the front. There's these 4 people and somebody horseback in a bud box. On a cold day, some of those calves will go out there and try to get back in that room because it's warmer. They want another vaccine. Here's how they bring from the front. almost no vocalization by the cattle. Most of all, watch the exit. Those have been gradual, and we keep making progress in this area. So what we want to do for a little while before lunch is review some basic stockmanship concepts, and then bring a new idea called cattle training. And how many of you have a pretty nice horse at home? I got one. How long did he become that way overnight? No. It took some training. It took some interaction. And I think all of us, when you watch some of these team roping horses or bulldogging horses or these ranch rodeo horses, cutting horses, all of those things, those ones that are on television, that's probably not their first activity. They didn't go catch him out of the pasture somewhere and just take him to Las Vegas. It took a while. I don't know why, if that's the case, why we put a replacement heifer down a chute and we know she's going to have to go there 3 to 5 times a year if you're in an AI program, and we've never showed her how to go through the system. I don't know why we take baby calves and expect them to go to a new feed yard and run to the squeeze chute and flow like those cattle if we've never showed them how to make a processing barn an adventure. So I want you to think about training. I don't even know what I'm doing here. You know more about this than I do. There's something about the people born up in this part of America. Where did Tom Dorrance and Ray Hunt and those Bud Williams, who born over in Eastern Oregon? All of those people that truly were devoted to understanding were born up in this circle. I don't know what's the water, I don't know whether it's the hills, I don't know whether it's each other, but you've changed the world. I can go some states way down south where there's a lot of image, but my Lord, it's a pretty rough place for animals. So I went this. So the point is, if I say something, Dr. Katie, that doesn't fit with what your team does every day, if you found a better way, don't let it stop. Jump up, any of you. If you've got something that happens at your family, at your farm, at your ranch, at your horse barn, that's made a big difference for you, one of the things I've learned most recently, if you don't share that and give it away, the new ideas will stop coming. Sometimes I go, I stay away from home too much, and I'll stay up at a little town in northern Nebraska sometime. If I ever have a chance, if there's an AA meeting there, I always go. I've learned more at AA meetings than I did at veterinary meetings. And I'll never forget this man. It was about near Christmas, and they had a table there. He was the sponsor. He paid for the building. He made the coffee. He had the cookies. He said not a word all night. And they celebrated an hour of soberness, a month of soberness, a week, a year, 20 years, 50 years. They all had different celebrations. And as they exited the door, they were full of energy and a jubilation, and it was just crazy how happy they were. And about after 2 or 3 of them went out the door, he said he stood up and he said, "Wait 1 minute." And they did. They paid attention to Jim. And Jim said, "I want you to know, appreciate what you have and the feelings that you have walking out that door, and know that if you don't go find someone very quickly and give that to them or support them so that they can have that same feeling, then you'll lose it. You've got to use it or lose it." So a lot of these things that you've seen that have worked for you, and you go over to a neighbor's and they don't understand it. It's not how we do things, it's why. It's why. It's not what vaccine we give, it's how. It's just amazing. So I want you to implement production stockmanship. I want you to share with some of the things. And everything I'm going to show you today is not a recommendation, Dr. Mandy. All of this stuff is stuff that I was doing to a point where I could have done better, and I didn't know there was a better way. And I had people show me, have you ever tried this? Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever dreamed about this? And so these are not recommendations. These are simply things that I've been able to see. And so none of this is mine. Bud Williams was a genius of stockmanship. There's no doubt. How many of you met him or visited with him? Yeah. Any comments about that?
He's the master of it.
He's the master. Yeah. The first exposure I had of Bud Williams was watching him on National Geographic TV walk 2,500 reindeer 30 miles across the Arctic to put them in a pen so they could harvest the antlers. And the government sent him up there because the Eskimos could get him in there. It's kind of like a buffalo drive in South Dakota. They'd use a helicopter, snowmobiles, Eskimos running and yelling, and they'd get them in the pens, but their expectation was to lose 10 to 14% to broken legs, suffocation, and trampling. And they said, something's got to be done. And so Bud went up there and spent 72 hours with that herd, and he walked those things about 20 miles and put them in the pen by himself, afoot, and they just filed in there and stood quietly. When he got ready to put them, they had a long, straight wooden alley with a chute up here. They took the antlers off. He'd just put 8 over in that corner where Megan is, and he'd just stand out here at a 45-degree angle. And when that first one went, he just backed up at a 45-degree angle, guided that first reindeer in the chute, and those other 9 followed him. And they just walked out. It was amazing, amazing. And that's different than what we were doing at feedlots. So the other people I want you to think about today is Chris and Miranda from Ogathella in Australia. They came to a meeting I had in Australia, and they said, Dr. Tom, we don't have time to stay for the talk. We drove 8 hours. We got to get back, but we want to make a deal with you. And I said, what do you? We're going to trade. And they said, I said, what's the problem? He said, well, we have 1,600 mother cows and 7,000 feral yearlings, and we take them to the feedlots in Australia. And when we go to check on those cattle, we can't believe what the people are doing to them. That's terrible. And we know how to help them, but that nobody knows me, they won't trust me, they won't let me in the feed yards. So if I come and spend 6 months or a year with you, maybe, and then go back, maybe they'll accept me. And I said, yeah, I'll do that, Chris, I'll do that. I said, well, you said something about trading. What do you have? Well, he said, Chris and Miranda and I, his question was, how much daily gain do you get on your Diane's calves the day you wean them? What is their daily gain? And I said, gain? They don't even eat. How can they gain weight with a dry matter intake of 0.5%? I said, I have people buy freshly weaned calves from sale barns, and depending on the weigh conditions, it'll take 21 days to get the purchase weight back. Well, he said, how do you people stay in business? I said, well, it's tough. It's tough. I said, well, Chris, what do your cattle gain the day you wean them? And he said, Miranda and I have a system now. If our babies are gaining 1 kilogram a day the day before they weaned, they gain the same kilogram the day we separate them, even, and sometimes more, because we take them to better pasture. And I said, how did you do that? He said, we changed 3. I said, this is not a big crew. They got 1,600 cows and 7,000 yearlings, and it's Chris and Miranda and 2 blonde-headed kids and 20 Kelpie dogs. So there ain't a lot of people. And I said, how do you have time? He said, we just trained them. I said, well, how do you have time to train that many cattle? Well, he said, we didn't do much. All we did was change 3 days of the calf's life. The first 2 days he was born, the day he was branded, and the day that we did the pre-weaning vaccination. And so Diane's been doing that. And I'll show you the difference in weaning behavior between those systems. It's not a recommendation. I just want you to see what that girl's done. So those are but these, Shane Morrissey, this is Shane's feedlot in Australia. These people had turnover. They could only keep workers about a year. They had 50% morbidity, 7% death loss. Shane went there and worked with the people, and morbidity went to 7% and death loss to 0.4. I hope you can hear this. Something's wrong with my sound. Megan, are you an expert at a computer?
No, I'm not.
Let me, let's just minimize. Let's just start that.
Actually, I think it's coming from.
Yeah. Okay, let me. We gotta plug this up. Where my power source goes? Anybody see a power source to a computer? Huh?
Oh, yeah.
It's a big one. Let's see if I hope this. Shane taught me when that red steer does that, that's huge. I had no idea how important that was. That's one thing that we want to learn today. The second thing is that that young lady with the roan horse that was doing the groundwork, she started there as a tank washer. And the unique thing about that company, they've let a tank washer go from a tank washer to cattle foreman to manager. And they, at last year's type of NCBA meeting in Australia, that young lady was the Stockman of the Year in Australia, and she's managing a 50,000 head feed yard today by herself. And so I think the power of the people is so important. So what we want to talk about is the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, and we have to know that animal well-being is founding on positive interactions and trust. Trust between animals and people. Positive performance. Foundation for a holistic system which benefits the whole internal supply chain. The effect of positive animal behavior methods of handling, inclusive of acclimation and exercise, and exercising animals is seen predominantly in qualitative measures which lead to a recordable quantitative result in health and performance. You guys have some genetics up here that have the ability to grade prime. I have never seen cattle like this in my life. Wow. What can you do to stop that animal from expressing that genetic potential? What part of his life is so critical in making sure he grades prime, not choice? In feedlot medicine, we used to, on these natural programs, we used to get really nervous because we'd have a pretty strong implant to give at the end of the feeding period, and we thought that would ruin grade. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect it. When do we hurt grade? About 450 to 600 pounds. If we wean some calves and 50% of them get sick and 3% of them die and they quit eating for a week, it changes the angle of that line of the adipose tissue in the muscle cells. So instead of have cattle grading prime, you hope they get into choice. That's what I'm so excited about. When you get a replacement heifer that wants to volunteer to go into the chute to get her cedar, what does that do the rest of her life? When you have a mama cow at preg check time and the only aggravated cow is the one that doesn't get to be first, that's what we need. That cortisol release at preg check time, when you hear cows bawling and hitting the chute at preg check time, what's the cortisol release doing to that fetus? His immune system's developing. He's 3 months pregnant, 4 months pregnant, 100 days pregnant, 7 or 8 days pregnant, or 7 or 8 months pregnant, and all of a sudden you whack that developing baby with a bunch of cortisone, it changes him forever. When they started studying embryology, Mandy, we'd take developing chicken eggs and inject the egg with dexamethasone. And that chick would go ahead and survive that. He'd live, he'd come out of the shell, but he was a mess the rest of his life. Every virus that come by, he was sick. Every time something happened in the weather, that conception and birth and life is still the biggest miracle known to man. That doesn't happen every day. It is a miracle. So that's why we have to be so critically important of every step of production. These are cattle that have been unloaded about 40 minutes after an 8-hour truck ride. What are they doing? Resting, talking to each other. What is that animal doing? There's 2. They're chewing their cud. Do you know how many taken me to convince a feedlot manager to put a bale of straw in a pen? He said it'll make a mess. That bale of straw has returned more money than anything we've ever done. If you check into the Marriott, I never stayed there. Have you ever stayed there? No. Anyway, if you check into the Marriott and you go up to your room and they got the windows shut and the heat's on and stuff there, but there's no bed. You can stay in there and stay out of the weather, but you're probably not going to rest as good as if they'd have put a bed in there. And that's all that is. That's all that is. So we're going to go faster now because we only got today to talk. So every day that you have a task on your list, it's this beautiful opportunity to have an intervention. Pasture rotation. Some of this grass I see here, some of you are rotating your pastures, some of you are managing soil, some of you are enhancing the grass to beyond your wildest dreams, but you got to move the cattle. And so the cattle really are one that makes the banker happy. He likes good soil, but he's got to have a check. And so how we rotate pastures. I went to a ranch with Bud and we went to beautiful grass, but they move these cows every 2 days and they go eat lunch and they run down the gate and they honk the horn and there'd be 70 of these big cows come running out of the hills and almost tear the gate out to go to the next paddock. Where were their babies? They left their babies. And they didn't go through the gate and start grazing. They went over 2 more ridges before they even stopped. How much confusion and stress and anxiety would it take to drive an animal away from something it loved? You see that in Walmart once in a while, but you shouldn't see it in a pasture. So their orphan rate, their summer pneumonia, their weaning health, it was awful. Can you fix that? Yeah. How did he do it? The next day we went to move the cows, he would not let a mother through that gate if her baby wasn't nearby. Them big old aggressive cows come running down there and he just stepped in the gate and say, "You forgot something, go get him." And they, pretty soon, off they'd go, bring their calf. Here'd come this nice young mother with her baby inside and she got to go through. It just took twice changing that to where nobody came to the gate without their baby. Probably 50 pounds of weaning weight. No more summer pneumonia. So these are things, this calving, tagging, all of this stuff. So Chris said we changed 3 days: calving, branding, and weaning. I said, "What'd you change about calving?" Well, he said, "We used to be so worried about getting a tag in a calf. That's all we got done. We just tag the calves. And he said, I asked myself, have I ever weighed them individually? Do you think it helps the cow find her baby? No, not really. What do they do with those tags when they get to the feedlot? They cut them out and throw them in a barrel. So he said, now if we're a seed stock, we got to have progeny data, genetic data, birth weights, yeah. But he said the first thing we did is quit tagging. And then he said we had all our time on our hands. He said we found a better use of our time. We would go out every morning, and if a cow was here and her baby was further away from her than that door, we'd either bring the baby to the mother or take the mother to the calf. We increased nursing frequency by triple. There was no more enterotoxemia. The calves didn't nurse 4 times a day, they nursed 40 times a day. We were given enterotoxemia vaccine at preg check, at pre-calving. We give their calves enterotoxemia or toxoid at birth. We still would lose 2 to 5% of them at 6 weeks of age. When we started increasing maternal effect and nursing frequency, the vaccine started to work. Now we don't vaccinate, but anyway. So instead of tagging, our focus was on a mother and a baby being together, a mother and a baby traveling together. So if we had a sick one, for heaven's sakes, if we caught him and gave him an antibiotic, he also got a tag. He was recorded. And so, you know, if you have 10% sick ones, when you go to the branding, you've got about 10% of them tagged. And if you want tags in them, you can tag them at branding. You can put anything on the tag. How are we gonna pick our replacement heifers? You guys spend enough time with your cows, you know where the heifers are coming from. You got all summer to see that 10 always sucks on 42. They could be a pair. Write it down. But I just changed the way you think about calving. Okay, then how did we change branding? We'll talk about that. I said, Chris, what I see at your weaning corrals, I want to do it. So he said, do you have any more pairs? I said, yeah, we got 130 left to work. And I said, I want you to tell me, I want you to do it exactly like you would do it at Mount Lindsay. He said, okay. He said, what day do you want to work them? I said, Saturday. And I said, how much help will we need? Well, he said, nobody, if you'll stay out of the way. And so we said Saturday. And what I noticed Wednesday, we got home from a feedlot early, and all these pairs were down in this meadow close to the facilities. And he said, we're not going to eat supper tonight. We jumped on our horses and we quietly gathered these pairs. And this set of crows was a pin like this, and then a pin A and pin B. So we brought them in really quietly, and he stood at this gate. We let all the pairs go from pin A to pin B. And then he counted to 10. And this time he asked them to come from pin B to pin A, but he just let the cows through and the babies stayed over there. So they're separated, sorted. He shut the gate. And then we had a little gate there in the corner, a little walk-through gate, and we went and got two 12-foot Powder River panels and opened that gate and put those panels out there and put the cows out here, and we just went left. I don't know when it happened, but sometime in the middle of the night, all 130 of those calves figured out how to go through those 12-foot panels, and they were all out there nursing the next morning. That was Wednesday. On Saturday, man, went out there, trotted out there. All those pairs come in. They went from pin B or pin A to B, B to A. Then they were separated. And we just put, you could put the calf cradle in front of those two. We just put a couple little panels there. Those calves just keep coming out those panels. And if you wanted to put them in a cradle, you could, or if you wanted to rope them, you could let them out there and rope them. Worked good. But there's just, I mean, absolutely amazing. When we did the pre-weaning vaccinations, Dr. Katie, we did the same thing, but instead of putting a cradle out there, we put a squeeze chute and lengthened the alley so that we had a little more, the calves were bigger. But we also put a set of pins out there, so when the calves went out through their pre-weaning, they were vaccinated, but they had to stay away from their mother one night. So they were in this deal. We spread out some oat hay around that fence and a nice clean water tank and made them stay and have a slumber party there one night without their moms. And then Diane was there at daybreak the next morning and stood at the gate and let them out to nurse. But those are the 3 days we changed to change what I want to show you. Okay? And it's the point is, and at feedlots, we don't talk about those places much. I'm so happy to be here. We'll talk about that this afternoon about how we get cattle to arrive, arrival training, processing training, acclimation, exercise, all those things. So the focus becomes the quality work, not the speed at which cattle move. So people say, we don't have time to acclimate feedlot cattle, we're busy. And I said, well, what are you doing? Well, we pull 200 a day. We have 20 deads. We got hospital cattle to move. We got too much, all our focus is on the sick and the dying. We wouldn't have time to prevent it. So we want to understand, and all of a sudden, what you guys know is none of this will happen unless you have the support from above. Everything that's ever happened good in this universe has come from up there. And so if you have owners or managers or the Holy Spirit that isn't helping you, you never make progress. I go work with young feedlot people, and I'll say, how many times does the manager talk to you today? Today? He hasn't talked to me this month. You're working with the wrong person. That person can never excel without that ownership and management. The owner and manager doesn't have to know how to do it, but he has to drive the energy to learn, and it's so important. This is some of the stuff that we've happened at a Red Angus ranch. They used to have 18% dark cutters. We've moved it to 1. They used to have 10% bullers. It's 0.6. They did have some carcass discounts the first year because they fed them too long and they had heavyweight carcasses. I'd rather have a heavyweight carcass discount than a dark cutter discount. Okay? Morbidity went from 35% to 7. Deads went from 3% to 0.6. And 2 of these deads died. They got trapped in the bunk one night in the snow, and so they weren't diseases. You can change things. What suppresses the immune system? Why did some people get COVID and other people didn't? Stress. Worry. You worry about something, you're going to get it. Don't even think about it. It's okay. Yeah. So stress is we know there are other things. BVD virus wipes the map. I mean, you guys keep vaccinating, keep testing your. Up here, if you get BVD in a herd, and you send us BVD cattle, it's a death sentence. That's an awful virus. But anxiety, if you see normal behavior start to change to apprehension and anxiety, you have to stop that before you have panic. And I'll show you examples of that. Cortisol, adrenaline, dehydration, starvation, fatigue, fear. But I wished I had slept during neurophysiology in vet school, Dr. Mandy. So what part of the brain tells the adrenal gland what to secrete? I think it's the hypothalamus, isn't it, Dr. Katie? Yep. You got to speak up. you don't be timid. Please. Okay, the hypothalamus does everything. So when we started buying calves from Kentucky, they'd come to Nebraska and we'd unload them and they'd run down off the truck and my gosh, they looked like just full of energy. We thought, what a buy. These things will be fine. That's on Monday morning. What'd they look like on Tuesday? Not quite so good. How about Wednesday? There'd be dead ones by Thursday. So we accused those order buyers of injecting them with dexamethasone as they loaded them. Because they were full of it. It's just like when Megan drinks too much coffee. So they were full of cortisone, but didn't come out of a bottle, right? Came out of their adrenal gland from fear and confusion and stress. And what I want to share with you, what I didn't know was why, that was about the time I thought I was a real feedlot veterinarian, and we revaccinated millions of feedlot cattle. I read this, you want to be careful when you read research. Because this research I read said that for every minute you delay a rival vaccination at a feedlot, you have more sick cattle. So we told people, you unload those things and take them straight to the barn and vaccinate them on the way to the home pen. That's why we had to revaccinate millions of feedlot cattle. When those cattle come off of there, do they need a vaccine? What the hell do they need? Water. That's the secret to life. Feed, nutrients, confidence, rest. Water and sleep will do a lot to keep you from getting COVID. So, okay, so how do you know that the hypothalamus is changing that? So what hormones do we want? Instead of cortisone, when the adrenal gland's pumping all this stuff out, there's a choice. It can be either cortisol, which stops the immune system, or it can be serotonin. It can be dopamine. It can be oxytocin. It can be vasopressin. It could be growth hormone. Those are health hormones. It's just amazing. Someday we'll know what you guys are doing because some of your cattle really trust you. We went out and looked at those cattle yesterday evening, and if you messed around at the gate, they all started coming to you. Notice that, Katie? That's telling you they want you. They need you. They want your support. But the behavior that we know switches the hypothalamus is only two simple things: cud chewing and exuberance. So when calves, like last night when we seen your calves up there, they started playing, boom, they're all right. But those big old cattle that just come off a truck that were laying in that bedding and ruminating and chewing their cud, you fix the hypothalamus. And you don't want to mess that up. You don't want to stop that. So it's just so critically important to understand that. So when you have an animal that gets exposed to bird flu or BVD or IBR, what cell in the body is the major thing? And he's the shortstop. He's going to catch all the bugs. What cell is it? Is it a bone cell, a muscle cell? What is it? Nerve cell? Blood cell, right? What color is it? Red or white? White. White blood cell. So they're called phagocytes. And what's so important is a phagocyte, where are most of them in the body? They're in the blood vessels and in the sub-Q. Remember when we used to give our 5-way viral vaccines in the muscle? And finally from BQA we said, why do we inject our food? Why don't we give it sub-Q? I thought, well, the vaccines won't work. There's a lot more phagocytes in sub-Q tissue than there is in the muscle. You can't really find one in the muscle. So it's a really important thing to understand how this process works. So how long does it take? If I vaccinate a calf that's never been vaccinated with IBR on June 1, when do I expect improvement in his health? Hours, days, weeks, or months? Weeks. Somebody said weeks. Yeah. 14 to 20 days. Yeah. I don't know why feedlot veterinarians think that they can vaccinate a calf that's never been vaccinated for at feed yard arrival and expect it to change anything. Yeah, by the time 20 days is over, the battle's won or lost. That's why what you guys do is just a miracle for me. A miracle. But this is the
Neutrophils are white blood cells that hunt and kill bacteria. In this spread, a neutrophil is seen in the midst of red blood cells. Staphylococcus aureus bacteria have been added. The small clump of bacteria release a chemoattractant that is sensed by the neutrophil. The neutrophil becomes polarized and starts chasing the bacteria. The bacteria, bounced around by thermal energy, move in a random path, seeming to avoid their predator. Eventually, the neutrophil catches up with the bacteria and engulfs them by phagocytosis.
So if that animal is confused and terrorized, that does not happen. But what Bud taught us was that that immune system does not work until the animal is confident of where he lives. So that major, think of a deer and a cougar. If that deer has a runny nose and the cougar gets after him, they ain't gonna, that immune system isn't gonna work. He's gonna save his life. It doesn't matter if you have a runny nose if the cougar eats you. You gotta get out of there first. And that adrenaline, that epinephrine, all of that stuff stops that process, and all those cells go on vacation. That's why we had to revaccinate all those feedlot cattle. Nothing happened. We blamed the vaccine, Dr. Emily, first. Vaccines are no good. No, it's when you do them. It's how and when you give them. So when that phagocyte finds that foreign protein, what happens next? He gathers it up and he takes it to the lymph nodes. So if it's in his nose or his leg or his lungs or something, he's going to take it to a lymph node and put in an order for a specific antibody. We need an antibody against IBR because I'm going to get exposed to it. And so what happens is, okay, so this little green thing, that's a fluorescent, that's that big thing that had the antibody. So he's running around inside this lymph node, and these are T helper cells, other lymphocytes. And they keep bouncing into each other and fluorescence, but they're just trying to get organized. So see those orange B cells out there? That's what makes the antibodies. But they aren't doing nothing yet. And this is hours, this is time lapse for, those are hours going by up in that yellow line. Okay, this is a random thing. This is like a singles bar. People bump into each other and they visit, and just, there's not much dancing going on. Watch this orange, this big killer cell. When those two get, look, that lasts a while. I mean, they're talking it over. And he gets really excited, and so do the B cells, but he's got to have an RNA description to take to the B cell so they know what to make. This is going on for hours and hours and hours. And finally, when he gets another message, more clear RNA template, then he'll go over there and share it with that B cell. There goes, now they're thinking about it. There he goes. And when that light comes on, then they start making antibodies. Now we're ready to go to work. And it's just so intriguing to me how complex. Now we've got 3 or 4 of them. I mean, this thing just, with water, with confidence and energy. So this is what happens time-wise. That interferon, the cytokine release when you vaccinate, it takes about 2.5, 3 days. That's when that phagocyte was working. And that's when your calf, after you process him, he doesn't look quite the same the next day. He's a little mellow. And I used to cuss the vaccine and say that was a sweat, huh? If you vaccinate cattle and they don't change the next day, they didn't need the vaccine or it's not working yet. You want your animals to go woof. I don't know, it's been a long time since I've been vaccinated, but if you get vaccinated and nothing happens, you either didn't need it or it ain't working. But it takes time. The orange cells, that takes 4 to 6 days. That big yellow orange cell, that's 7 to 11. And it's clear out here 12 to 14 days before the B cells start making much. That's how long it takes. I used to be a really famous veterinarian. I would ask people to revaccinate cattle at day 11, and they'd get a little better. If I'd have known this, I'd have just taken care of them, fed them, and watered them another day. Now the cattle would get better. So when we had some of these revaccination cattle, we'd take them out of the pen, take them to the processing barn, and very gently just boost them, and they were a lot better the next morning. The vaccines work in 8 hours. No, it wasn't the vaccine. It was the trip down there and back. Had nothing to do with the vaccine. So always think about what the reason is for your change and your improvement. Okay, so we're gonna quickly understand how to communicate with cattle. First, we got to understand the difference between prey animals and us. The first thing we do is take all the voice out. We got a feedlot that's next to 5 rivers down there in Colorado, and we work with about 25,000 head yard next to it. You can hear the screaming and yelling in the processing barn at daybreak. And I don't know who they're yelling at, but the cattle know. Shane from Australia found research that documents that up here on a quiet morning, if you've got 2 horses or 2 cows in a meadow, they can hear each other's heartbeat for up to 8 feet away. Can you imagine that? You think they can't hear yours? What? If they can hear each other's heartbeat, what do you think it feels like to them when you scream at them? Or hit the side of the alley with a paddle? It's devastating to them. So we take all the voice out. Try to be silent, absolutely silent. It's hard. Diane and I, we quit screaming at the cattle, but we have to go over in the back and yell at each other. That's just our young son says, "Why do you guys yell at each other?" It's because we're deaf. Anyway, but attitude is everything, position and posture. What is the definition of correct position when you're handling cattle? That's so complex. Position is how you stand. How far away? Is your chest against them? Or your shoulder? Or your hip? Or your back? Position has no limits. Are you looking with your eyes, or are you looking at the ground? Position. Are you behind them, beside them, in front of them? Are you standing still, or are you acting like your hip hurts? We'll work on that this afternoon. Position is everything. Distance. Those cows I buy out of the sale barn, when I'm first there, they want me from me to Megan, first time I'm with them, 40 feet. Those dairy beef cattle come to the feed yard, they want you beside them, this far. It can change. Angles and direction. This idea that you never ever, I used to tell people, just circle the herd. You want to drive cattle crazy, ride in a circle. What does a wolf do? They know you're a wolf the minute you start around. If you need to get around there, around here, go this way and take a 45, go that way. Try to never circle unless you want to wake them up. Circles are really tough. You go slow with some cattle. I watched Bud when we were working with elk. He told me those bull elk were in rut. He said, never take a full step. When you pick a foot up, don't put it down until you know you're going to be right. Because you don't want to have to pick it up. You may want to put it here, here, or here. So, and I've seen other times he'd run like a Comanche at a cow. Just depends on the situation. This is what I want to learn more about: stimulus, release, and cadence. Ted, the people that help us with horsemanship, their major thing is rhythm, the rhythm in biology. If you want cows to walk at a certain rate, that horse cadence, foot speed, should be the speed you want the cows to go. If your horse does this, so do they. If your horse is doing this, so do they. So foot speed is everything. Well, how do you change your position? Sometimes you're late and you need to get someplace, and I'm telling you not to make your horse do this. People like Kurt and Ted and those guys, they can have a horse take baby steps. Kurt can get a horse to just stand here and do this, not go anywhere. And then if he needs to get somewhere, you can take a big old step or two. That's really part of field timing and balance. The thing that we're starting to feel about pressure and release is that you use the pressure it takes, but what I've got to get better at is being intermittent pressure. So if you keep pushing on a herd, if you keep pushing on an animal, if you keep pushing on a wife, all of a sudden they push back. Okay? So if you're gonna use pressure and release, it's intermittent pressure and it's decreasing. So if you get a cow to move with this much and step back, and you want her to do that same thing, you always try to lessen the pressure the second time. And pretty soon she'll move when you think about her moving. You won't even have to pressure her. So that pressure and release thing is really complex, more complex than I've got a big old horse that's got a fairly small brain, and it's taken about a year to get him to move his hip. But man, he's proud that he can do it now. And the reason he'll almost anticipate doing it, I used to put my foot back there and just keep my foot against him where I wanted him to move over, and I'd have to push harder and harder and harder. Pretty soon I got him to do it. The next time I just put it back there and put a little less on him, a little less on him, a little less on him. And if he didn't do it, I didn't maintain the pressure. I went intermittently, intermittently, intermittently. Pretty soon he goes, whoo, the light come on. So these things are really important. Cattle crave to see you. Those calves we went out to see last night, even if you look like me, they want to see you. They won't turn loose of you. Why is that so consistent? It's survival, right? They want to see everything that moves, everything that's new. They want to see you. They love to follow each other. We've got to stop pushing cattle from the back. How can they follow each other if you wad them up in the back? You got to push on the first one. You ought to take 2 to get 10. You ought to take 3 to get 20. You ought to take 10 to get 100. They want to walk straight. It really hurts cattle to do this. Some of these things we've built, can you imagine an animal standing like this for 4 or 5 minutes waiting to get in the chute? Oh, they want to go straight. They want to wait straight. Why do cattle walk on the side of a tub? They can't get their feet down. And some of us put the bottom of our chute too narrow, and we ask an animal that weighs 1,400 pounds that likes to stand like this, we want her to put her feet together and ask her to crawl in the chute. Try walking with your feet together. You can't go anywhere. So those kinds of things, so foot speed and hammer, and what I'm just starting to learn is it doesn't matter what the herd's doing. There's usually 2 or 3 animals in this room or in that pen that's going to send everybody. Yeah, it's the sentinel, influential, whoever. Are the dominant cattle in the front row? No, never. No, the most influential animals are from the second row back. Those others are up here in case there's a wolf over the hill. That's voluntary. We want cattle to perceive to belong where we intend. We don't care whether it's a pasture, a squeeze chute, or a truck. We want those cattle to really want to be where we want them. How many times you've seen a sale barn or loading fat cattle, they'll run half the draft in that truck and there's a little delay, and the cattle that went in there come tearing back out of the truck. What does that tell you? Where is their mind? My battery's low. My computer's battery's low. Now it tells you they didn't want to be in there. Okay, thank you. everything's voluntary. Handler presence is the first level of pressure. Some people in my group walk into a pen of cattle to get fecal samples for parasite flotation counts, and the cattle try to tear the back of the pen out. I got another guy that comes in there, and he goes in there, and the cattle try to follow him out. Tank washers at our feedlots are the most important people. I have tank washers that terrify the cattle. I have tank washers, all the time they're washing the tank, the cattle are trying to get their billfold out of their pants. Which one is better? Yeah. Point of pressure is the eye. And what we've learned lately is there's a big difference between the left eye and the right eye of cattle, deer, sheep, goats, pigs. And if you give a range cow the opportunity, they'll always choose to meet you the first time standing like this. It's just amazing. They want to meet you the first time with their left eye. And so you've figured out how, you can do that. You can just move around and make that easy. Why is that so consistent? I dug out my anatomy book. I forgot that the optic nerves cross, and whatever goes into this eye goes over to the right prefrontal cortex, the thinking side of the brain. Whatever goes into this eye crosses over and goes to the left, the more reactionary side of the brain. So if you're working with range cattle or cattle you've never seen before, always start on this side. If you're working with Holsteins, you might want to come over here and wake them up. Makes a difference. So really important, and we'll see that today. Okay. Most thing that's helping me is time. Give them weight. Okay. How long can a cow stand there and not change? 7 seconds. So if you have a cow and you're bringing her across here and she stops the first time, there's no reason to push on her until you count to 7 that first time. So when she stops, you just step back and go uno, dos, tres, get up to 7, and she'll take off. I do that with a lot of Hispanic kids. Those people, when a cow stops, what do? No. When she stops the first time, count to 7, and just nudge her and she'll go. When you get uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, and you say siete, and that cow steps, they say, Dr. Tom, she can count. I don't know. Anyway, but okay, the second time she stops, don't wait till 7. Count to 3 or 4. The third time she stops, count to 2. The fourth time she stops, all you have to do is just look at her. So time is so much. Work from the front. If you can't see a cow's eye, you're in the wrong place. And there's a point in a bulldogging run when you're in the wrong place, and that's what gets kids in trouble. Because you can't find that animal's eye. And so you've got to be where that horse and that animal are communicating. Use their curiosity to draw to you. You can draw cattle. The biggest challenge I have where I live in America, nobody is comfortable leading cattle. Right? You go to Australia, and if you took a set of fat cattle out of a pen without somebody leading them, you would lose your job. If you went to Brazil and led those Nelore, or went to get the Nelore cattle out of the jungle, if you didn't have somebody in front of those cows, you wouldn't come back from the jungle. And I don't know why it's uncomfortable for me to lead cattle, because I can't see them. You don't trust them. And my horses don't. I got to get my horses broke to the point where they want that calf chewing on their tail going to the home pen. Changes everything. Stay out of the blind spot, okay? the idea of taking 2 to get more, when I want 5 when I needed to bring 5 to the bud box or the tub, and the cattle were waiting here, I'd walk and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'd bring 5. And what had happened to the other cattle back there? I was shoving them against the gate. Now I come back, and if I can get 1, 2 to go forward, I take 2 steps with them and give them purpose, then all I have to do is back up and I got 20. So don't take, if you want drafts of 6, take 2. If you want drafts of 100, take 2. And so it's, 1, 2. I want to be next. All the herds, by the time he gets done with this reimplant pen, he's got cattle standing up there for born and nothing to be next. Instead of hiding back there pushing on the gate. When we're processing cattle, work from the front. This is this boy with the green shirt. Watching him. See, he went clear to that no back to grab an animal's tail to push it in the chute. See his track back there? I said, no, just by the eye. Never go past their eye. If you go past their eye, you pull their head around. And if you can, back by not, he's still taking 2 extra steps. Why did I set that trash barrel there? There, that's perfect. Half a step, all it took. If you walk parallel, you'll stop him. So I set that barrel there so he had to walk out at an angle. Work from the front, work from the front. This is first time I had yearlings when Bud came to live with us, and this is the first group we gathered. And there's a gate down to the left, and we had these 300 of these heifers there standing by the fence, and we're sitting out here horseback. And Bud said, Dr. Tom, these cattle have stopped. How would you start the herd? And I said, well, I'd trot around in a circle, and I'd go back and put gentle pressure on the back and start them again. And I said, I know you would. Don't do that. I said, well, what would you do? He said, I'd work with the front. I said, is that red heifer, is that in the front? No, he said, that's some neurotic, hard-keeping, dingy heifer that the smart ones have pushed out in case of the wolf. Well, that ain't the front. I said, where's the front? He said, it's always usually in the second row. And I said, well, how do you work with the second row? And he said, Ziggy knows. I said, well, tell Ziggy we need to get going. So he just looked with purpose down at that gate. Ziggy come out here and he pulled that black heifer's head around like this, and then he went back out in front and walked by her eye, and that dog and that black heifer took all 300 of them down to the gate, and they just stood down there, and I rode down there and let them through the gate. We pulled the cattle down there and didn't drive them down there. And it's taken me a while. We've got to make sure we're in contact with this beautiful eye. Why did the Creator make that pupil horizontal? Isn't that amazing? That's a miracle. You look at each other, or you look at your dog, or you look at a wolf, his pupil's round. He's a predator. These horses, sheep, cattle, goats have this beautiful horizontal pupil. That's so you can see the world. When this thing's grazing, it has 360-degree peripheral vision. You can't sneak up on a grazing. That movie Kurt Pate was in, where he snuck up behind that horse, well, you don't know. Remember the Horse Whisperer movie when that big sorrel horse joins up with the movie star? What was his name? Anyway, don't ask Kurt sometime why that horse was staying in the meadow. Kurt was laying down there in the grass, had a hold of his hind leg. And when the movie was right, he let go of it and old Sarley took off. But how did he get there? he had to let that horse see him. So he had to move the horse's head. So he crawled up there, and he'd worked with that horse a lot. He let him just start rubbing that cannon bone. He just had a hold of him. But they can see clear around them when they're grazing. When they pick their head up, it's 285. So you have this opportunity every place to have an effect on them, right? So, and if you're behind them and they want to see you more clearly, what do they have to do? Okay, so if you want them to circle, go be behind them. And you can, yeah. So that understanding the downside to that pupil is their depth perception stinks. Unless you move, they can't tell whether Dr. Mandy is 8 feet from me or 20. And until she moves, I'm going to do this. That's why cattle move their head, right? What does a calf do just before he steps in the back of a truck or a squeeze chute? What does his head do? And I used to interpret that as a refusal. And I'd thump him in the rib. No, that's what they do. When a calf does that, the hair should stand up on the back of your neck, because the next thing he's going to do is go. That's how they see you. That explains why you never stand still. If you go in a pen of freshly weaned calves and stand like a post, they'll tear the fence down. They can't find you. It takes movement. So go in there and just act like you're, just do something. Here they come. Here they come. Understand this eye. Understand this eye. This is an old drawing. This point of balance thing is, it's true if you want cattle to go down this curved alley. If your dream is to get cattle to go in a circle in front of you, stand at their shoulder. But if you got to go to a cornfield, if you're going to summer pasture, and the cattle are doing this, it's going to take you a while to get there. If you want them to go straight, come out here. So that point of balance deal is a little confusing. So we don't say point of balance, we say point of focus, and that's the eye. Okay? So that point of focus is the eye. Everything, I said, Bud, who taught you all this stuff? And he said, nobody. And that's what he meant, no human. He said, and he never told me this, but what he studied was those magic dogs you guys got. He knows what's inside of Border Collie. And that's, I'm ashamed of this. This baby's 5 months old, and this is his first job. And I'm behind him with a video camera. And every time Ziggy would do that, I thought, and I would just look at the gate. Every time I didn't say a word. And he'd look at me and I'd just look at the gate. He put all 84 of these heifers up in a corner, and I needed them in a pen to the left. There's 150 acres these cattle could go to. And I thought, he should be out here. No. What does he do when an animal responds? Says, thank you. He went way out there. And I thought, what the heck's he doing out there? He was telling me where he wanted me. I am so ashamed of this. Now I know so every time he looks at me, he's giving me direction. Because he knew more about this than I did. But what he took them to the corner, got in front of them, was on the inside. Okay, push on the eye. He taught me how to stop cattle. When he goes parallel, he'll stop every one of these. Boop, boop, boop. That's how you stop cattle, parallel movement. How do you start them? Go against them. Use the pressure he takes. Does he bite you on the leg, or is he looking at the eye, the nose? He's driving the nose. It's okay. Look at all the rest of those cattle have gone in there. The gate's still open. They just stayed there. They'd stay there for a week. Now, when it ain't working, stop. people in Australia say, if you Americans would start making your own cigarettes again, you'd be better cattle handlers. You gotta stop. Okay, these 4 heifers are branded, and they come from a ranch that have really good dogs. And this poor puppy and these few animals, my position back here with the camera is telling those animals they should be coming this way, right? And Ziggy kept looking at me like, go down there and I'll bring them to you. See, look at him, get out of here. Now when he tells me where to go, I go. He brings the cattle. He gave up on me. He tried. He didn't want to bite this red heifer again. And this is how cattle crave good dogs, how cattle crave good handlers. He went around these bales, and these cattle went to find him. They hadn't had enough of him. I couldn't believe this. There he is. Now I got where I can bring. Now he is behind them. I told you a minute ago, don't be behind cattle. He goes across till he finds an eye, and across. Watch that black heifer. She run on. As soon as she could see him, he leaves. That's how they drive him straight. One eye to the other. One eye to the other. I wished he would sit, but he never did. He'd go down. I never did get this dog to sit. What good would that have been? Okay, so that's all you have to learn today when we go out to work for these cattle. They want to see what is pressuring them, they want to see their destination, and they want to go half around you. Okay, so Katie, Megan, when we used to ship fat cattle, so let's imagine this is the corner gate, and we're going to ship fat cattle, and we wanted the pen to empty and go down the drover's alley this way. So I'd bring a team of 3 people, and where would we go? We'd ride into the pen, and I'd circle around there behind the bar, and then we'd spread out and we'd try to ship cattle. And we could get them out here eventually. But when we rode around there, where's the gate? Where's their mind? When we're sitting here, they're all looking at us. When we trot around there, where do their minds go? Back to the bar. So today we teach people, build your pens in rectangles, and if you want to empty the pen, just come down this fence, and the cattle will, if they all go to that corner in that bar, you're in a perfect place to do what Bud did with them reindeer and just go at a 45-degree angle, and when that lead animal comes out of here, you can just back up here, and you can put all those cattle from that corner to that corner. Then you're in the perfect place to do this, and those cattle will come this way, and then you're perfect position to back up, and those cattle will just go out and they'll go down the drover's alley that way. And so you've had to ride your horse here about 10 feet. So you have to follow the rule that you can't break is they have to see you simultaneously with their destination. They have to see you simultaneously with their destination, and it really helps if they can go half around you. Okay? Which eye will I be working with as these cattle come down here? It'll be the right eye. Okay? Now, there'll be a drover's alley there, and there'll be pens on the other side that are shaped the same way, but I'll be standing here and sending them out, and I'll be able to work with the left eye. And it'll always take a few seconds less time to empty fat cattle on this side of the drover's alley than it does that one. And that's the reason why, if they're range cattle. But that's what we'll try to do this afternoon is to do those kinds of things. And we got some challenges there because of some of the pin shapes. And so, but I want you to be thinking about that. We'll draw some pictures of that when we get out there. So one thing that the cattle industry has to do, we have to all speak the same language, and we have to know what proper position is to be a caregiver. And this is an example of a caretaker. And if you ever see this happen at a sale barn, a dairy, or ranch, or a farm, you have to explain to these people why this is backwards. Okay? His intention is to move those cattle out of that spot and send them left. And about a third of them are hitting that post with their shoulder, their rib, or their hip. And all of them are tearing their feet up. The longer they go here, they're looking at him going, you want us to go that way, but the gate's shut. We're having, either you don't know or you don't care. This devastates cattle. They were hard to process, hard to load, hard to sort. Just a heck, hard to sort. So when you see that happening, it's just devastating. Stop it. Okay, now if you want to discount cattle, it's not such a big deal. Okay? They'll go straight body. That's beautiful. But see that little curve they're wanting to do? Which eye is he on? He'd be a little quieter if he's on the left eye. So that's why. How did he slow cattle down? He went with them. Perfect. Parallel. How did he speed them up? He went there. Now watch this boy in the blue shirt. He's got numbers on his shirt. He's a he's a boy that was captured out of prison, and he's on work study. This has been the most beautiful man I've ever met in my life, because he knew what these cattle felt like. They need to see their source of guidance simultaneously with their destination, and they need to come half around you. And he stops. He's in the front. Look at that poetry in motion. Not a one is hitting that post. All of those feet are landing flat. These cattle were easy to sort, easy to load, easy to process. That's magic. They want to follow you, and they wait to go with their friend. They say, are you ready? No, let's wait a minute. No, yeah. Whether you're in a pasture, a pen, or a sale barn, we have to meet that need of proper position. So emptying pens is the key to everything. It sets the stage. Here's a pen in a processing barn. Shane, we need those cattle to leave there and go that way before we take them to the butt box. Which fence is he on? The fence where they can see him and the destination. Most people tend to want to go around there and shove them out. That videographer guy said, you emptied that pen with your hands in your pocket. That's not hard. That is key. That is so key. He was standing with his back to him purposefully. You know, if he wanted to go faster, he'd turn around and put his chest in there. Position is everything. Especially teach your kids this. So Addie's about 9 years old here. So I said, Addie, where did your grandpa tell you to go to move those steers? She said, he wants me to come back in that corner and push them out. I said, no, we need them to leave that gate and go to the right. So show them where the gate is and let them see you and the gate and go half around you. Which eye is she working on? The right eye. Don't get hung up on this right and left eye. This luxury to come around you is so much more soothing to cattle than that subtle difference between eyes. So don't get hung up on that eye thing, okay? You've got to meet this requirement first. Simultaneously, be where they can find. How long will that steer stand there? Okay, did you see the baldy? He didn't move till she straightened out his nose. Did you see what that old gray horse did? She wanted to go that way and that gray horse wouldn't go. And he pushed that nose with his ears. I want to show these horses know count to 7 and he's almost embarrassed. I gotta go. But watch this pony. This is different. So we need these cattle to go to the processing barn. Jeremy
needs to leave. Watch the white face. He ain't gonna move until you straighten out his nose. How do you straighten out his nose? Be more in front of him, more available to that. And all they had to do was just take 1.5 steps. Not only did he go, he took 20 with him. So watch those cattle that roll their head down. There he is again, see? Don't push on his hip. No, don't work. He tried it. So he had to move to the left to be more available. Now watch what happens when he moves to the left, more available, then he just leans into that steer. It's not complex. That's the key to a really good processing work. These cattle love to see you, love to see you. We get to feed some bison once in a while, and that went to this yard one rainy morning and I said, are you guys busy? We got to move this one pin of bison, and it usually takes an hour. And I said, how do you do it? Well, he said we get the 2 front end loaders and we get in the back of and we drive, and that'll push them out the gate. And I said, what usually, sometimes what happens, they said, they go around us and they go back and we have to do it 3 times. And I said, why don't you just stay at the gate and tell them where you want them to go? So this first bit, it's kind of a rainy morning, so here they are. The video will get a little clearer. So this kid takes his saw with him. There he goes. There's the herd, and he's going to go up to the bump gate, and he's going to move them down the bump into the next pin. This instinct to see you is so intense, so intense. As long as you don't do anything silly to stop it. Okay? It makes it really clear, this is the route. This is the route. Moves his horse's head, moves his horse's ear, backs up, make sure they see him. Show him again, Look at that way. Okay. Here goes his brother. That is really rewarding. That is voluntary movement. That's animals going someplace because they want to, not because they have to. That changes everything. They can see him, they can see the gate, and they can come half around him. Saved a lot of diesel going getting the front end loaded. That took about 40 seconds. Tomorrow, if they wanted to move them down the next pin, it'd take 20. Once you teach preachers this, don't wait too long to reinforce this. Give them another lesson tomorrow. Bring them back. Or give them something else to learn. Something else to learn. Mandy, what is our schedule?
We're supposed to have lunch at noon, so here in about 10 minutes, but.
Oh my, okay, so.
We're pretty lenient. I mean,
Okay,
it's
so
all right.
let's go fast, and then would people be insulted if we get our meal on time? And then I'll reorganize some stuff, and while you're eating or right after we eat, before we go, we can do a little more?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
so let's go
plan is
10
to-
minutes, and then okay, so reading cattle, I work with pin riders. I used to, in my feedlots, I used to drive the pickup and drive the feed alleys and look at all the cattle. And which cattle can you see from your pickup? The good ones. You can't see the back of the pen. You can't see the loose stools. You can't see the lame ones. And I was stealing people's money. So I take my horse with me quite a bit, and I ride with the guys in the priority pens and new cattle. But what I want them to do is be available to the new cattle, create trust, reward, demand honesty, and so we have to go where the cattle want us to go. And when we go into a pen and you just move your horse around just a little bit, or you're in a pasture, if you don't see this, you can create it.
And when you mess around here and you get these four geniuses doing this, and you want to move the cattle out of the pen, please don't ride back here and break their hearts. If you ride around to look at these other cattle, it'll devastate these four geniuses, because they'll have to follow you. That's hard. So just walk gently down here in front of this white one and get in front of him, get his head straight, and take 2 steps that way, and these 4 cattle will empty the pen. And so we have our pen riders still struggle. People will say, Dr. Tom, do I have to get every one of them up every day? And I say, well, what are you there for? To see if they're well. Well, I said our system of looking at cattle is simple: locomotion, digestion, respiration, mental health. How are you going to tell if his locomotion system's okay if he doesn't get up? Well, yes, you got to get him up. What do cattle do when they take a few steps? They pass manure. You can evaluate their digestive system. Are they acidotic? Do they have coccidiosis? Are they dehydrated? What do you see? So locomotion, digestion, respiration. If they walk 10 steps and they cough and say, wait a minute, you might want to think they might have a little BRD, huh? And then, but if they walk right, their digestive system's okay and their respiration's okay, they ought to move with freedom. They ought to feel good. Their mental health. So those are things that we keep doing. So we want cattle to move. This is a very simple system. So how do you stop cattle? You walk parallel to slow it down. How do you speed them up? You walk against them. How do you move them and tell them to continue? You go out at a slight angle. Okay. So those are the only 3 gears you have to worry about. Stop, go, continue. And so, but you can do this horseback or you can do it afoot. There's a crippled heifer in this pen, and I went in this pen and this longhorn cross and a black heifer tried to take them away. And if you let those cattle overcome your presence, the sick cattle will hide from you. So you got to get that longhorn and this black heifer to trust you, and then the sick cattle will come and find you. So this one on the side is pretty touchy. So I cranked her head around and went by her once, and she goes, I don't believe you. I don't want any more of this. They'll always ask you twice. Watch what she does. She said, are you sure? When they do that, run to the front. Watch her change. Yeah, he knows how to talk to me. So so there'll be a lame heifer come out of this bunch, and the gate's down the hill, so I got to take her to the gate. She's got in her left front, she's got a soul abscess in that left front. When she stops, I stopped. When she said, where do you want to go? I showed her. I got her head kind of straight and available. I sped her up. Now, if you're horseback, you don't have to go near this far, guys. Just take your horse to the front and bring his head by. Teach him to stop and park. When my shoulders are perfectly parallel to hers, she'll stop. Poof. Okay. Now, when she stopped, I should have stepped out 6 inches. But she'll just keep asking me. We'll do this 2 or 3 times going across there, and each time she'll want to be closer to me. So if you got a heifer calving out in a meadow, or you've got you're heat detected and you need a single animal to go to the chute, this is a really fun thing to practice. She stops, I stop. Now, when we get over that gate, we're going to have to switch eyes. Kurt Pate talks a lot about switching eyes. So you're going to have to understand that you've got to get over there and be visible. I don't know how they did this, but if you've never gone to the right side of this heifer, only 7% of the image that's in the left eye has gone over to the right eye. So she doesn't know I'm here in that right eye. There. Oop. Okay, now she knows. Okay, now when she stops, if her front legs are even, she'll stay. If they stop with their front legs like this, they won't stay. So her brake's set, her emergency brake's set. So I go open the gate. We used to circle around and push on their hip to get them out. Now we just walk straight by. Somebody said there's 2 cripples in there. This was before my hip surgery. Watch her step forward long before I'm at the shoulder. There. Now look where you want to go. I'm looking out the gate. They can tell where you're looking. If you want them out the gate and you're looking at the windmill, they ain't going out the gate. So they can tell that pressure. Lucy's gonna pull this, the gate's down here, she went to the front. Said hello, the black baldy, that's the one she wants out. He looks, she pushes on his nose, not his shoulder, not his hip. What are those ears telling you? When that ear's back, what is that telling you? That tells you what's in the eye. When that ear flips back, he's looking at Roni. Now there'll be times when this ear will flick forward to that gate, and you just need to start patting yourself on the back because he's going. Watch those ears. Same way going in the chute out there in the processing barn. You can tell what they're looking at. Sometimes you got to trot, move. You got to use the speed it takes. Okay, while we're eating lunch, I want you to think about this, and then we'll go over it. This is why these are my dreams, and they're not nightmares. These are real. Okay, I want you, my dream is that you'll help me change weaning behavior expectations. I want you to keep helping me train truckers. We've come 1,000,000 miles on getting truckers to understand how to load cattle. But guys, our cattle are too big. I'm ashamed of my part of the industry. Do you know what the bruise rate is now in finished cattle in America? We had it way down when we changed the model of these trailers. Only 53% of the cattle are bruise free. 47% of cattle are bruised on their last truck ride. We gotta fix it. Procurement. If all the cattle you buy have to be mass treated with 3 antibiotics, go buy them someplace else. I'm sorry. Procurement. Don't do stupid things. And what Katie and Mandy and Emily are doing is prudent antibiotic use. When I started veterinary feedlot work, when I'd go to these protocols, I rode with these famous consultants, and I'd go in the hospital and I'd say, how do you make a decision whether a calf's got BRD or pneumonia? And they say, well, Dr. Tom, if his temp isn't above 104, we can't treat him. If he's from 104 to 105, we use biomycin. If he's 104.5 to 106, we use Draxin or Zuprevo. And if he's 106 and above, we use Nuflor. And I said, how's that working for you? Well, he said, we don't know. And I said, well, what is the correlation between an animal's rectum temperature and his lung disease? When you get a bottle of Zaprivo, does the label say for treating hot rectums or treating pneumonia? It's just a thought. If you take your kid to the doctor and you think he's got pneumonia and he doesn't listen to him with a stethoscope and he sends you $45 worth of pills home, don't pay the bill. Listen to these cattle. It's your stethoscope. So, anyway, we'll talk about that but what I want you to, this is the reason Bud Williams moved to Winkelman. This is what we saw every fall. The scans come from Phillipsburg, come to Winkelman, they're loaded at 2 o'clock in the morning. They've been doing this since 8:30. Powerful genetics. We used to process cattle like this. Now, Bud's taught us how to stop this in 3 7-minute lessons. And you shouldn't have to do that. That's one level of weaning behavior. This is what we dream about. The mothers of these calves were loaded 4 hours ago, went to the cornfield. These calves were waiting to go to the background in the yard. Some of them are resting. Once in a while one will say something, but they're essentially converting the grass and the milk they ate this morning. Diane always, we sold these to the same people for 15 years. She goes with the trucks, they unload them, and she walks and leads them to the bunk, and they line the bunk. They eat 2% of their body weight in dry matter day 1. Go get a big drink, go lay down in the straw. It can be done. So I think it's so important it's for people like me, Dr. Katie, for people like me to continue to tolerate this and not do anything about it. And for Merck to invest money in you learning this, because they're not going to sell as much as we do. They're not going to sell it, we're not going to need to be back. I really, really respect Merck having enough foresight, Dr. Katie and her team, to know that you can change this. Lunchtime?
Yeah, we're ready, sorry. I wasn't-
Can you turn the lights on and we'll say grace?